Good morning, Honors Math. So I'm going to do a review video of multiplying exponents, which is Chapter 7, Section 1. I just don't feel like we're quite there yet, so I'm going to have you do some problems and do some practice so that I can make sure you really understand these. And then tomorrow, I'm going to have you do a division review video. You will be on both days submitting the notes from this video as your assignment. So make sure as you're doing this video, you're taking notes on paper because that's your assignment. You're going to be submitting those. I need to make sure you watch the video and actually did these practice problems. Okay, so here we go. All right, here we go. It's time to get our math brains on. So what I want you to do is copy this problem on your paper. I want you to do the problem, and then I want you to come back and watch me do it because you need to make sure you're doing this correctly because I saw a lot of mistakes before spring break. Don't forget you do power to power first, and then you do the product rule. All right, so go ahead and pause the video and work this problem out. Okay, so what you should have done was the following. I'm going to do this slowly because some of us are making some mistakes. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your -4 and you're going to square it. -4 times -4, that is 16. And then you're going to do x to the 4th to the 2nd. Power to a power you multiply. So that's x to the 8th. And then you do y to the 6th to the 2nd. 6 times 2 is 12. On the z in the first parentheses, you have to remember there's an imaginary 1 there. So 1 times 2 is 2, so it's z squared. So my first power to power turns out like that. The second power to a power, we have to do -7 to the 3rd. -7 times -7 is 49. And then 49 times -7 is -343. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the x to the imaginary 1 to the 3rd. So that's x to the 3rd. Now we're going to do the y to the 5th to the 3rd. So 5 times 3 is 15. And then z to the 2nd to the 3rd power. 2 times 3 is 6. So z to the 6th. Okay, so now we're ready for the product rule. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your coefficients in each parentheses. 16 times -343. Which is -5,488. Then, when you combine your x's in each parentheses, x to the 8th plus x to the 3rd. When you multiply, remember you add the exponents. That's x to the 11th. When you take your y's and you put them together, 12 plus 15 is 27. And then when you put your z's together, 2 plus 6 is 8. So here is your answer that you should have gotten. Okay, so here's problem number 2. Again, I would like you to please pause the video, write the problem down, work it out, and then come back and watch my video as I explain it. I'll go a little faster this time, but there are some things I want to make sure I point out that I saw mistakes in as you were doing them. All right, go ahead and pause the video and work it out. All right, so the first thing that you have to remember in that first parentheses is that negative doesn't go with the x. There's actually an imaginary 1 there. So when we do the coefficient -1 to the 3rd, -1 times -1 is 1. 1 times -1, so the coefficient in that first parentheses is -1. Again, that negative is not attached to the x to the 6th. And then the x would be 6 times 3 is x to the 18th. The y has an imaginary 1 on it. 1 times 3 is y to the 3rd. And then z to the 2nd to the 3rd, that would be z to the 6th. So there's the first parentheses, power to a power. The second parentheses, all right, that's -5 squared. -5 times -5 is 25. X to the 3rd to the 2nd, 3 times 2 is x to the 6th. Y to the 6th to the 2nd is y to the 12th. Okay, the last coefficient, or the last parentheses, 3 squared is 9. Every one of these has a 1 on them, so x to the 1 times 2 is x to the 2nd, y to the 2nd, z to the 2nd. Okay, now I'm ready to put all of these together. So the first thing I'm going to do is work with my coefficients. Negative 1 times 25 times 9. So negative 1 times 25 is negative 25. And then negative 25 times 9 is negative 225. Okay, if I put all my x's together, you got to be careful not to leave anything out. So remember, this is where I like to underline so I don't forget anything. X to the 18th, x to the 6th, and y to the 2nd. That gives me 26, right? Did I do that right? Oh, nope, I just mixed up my x's and y's. Sorry. X to the 18th, x to the 6th, then x to the 2nd. So in other words, I shouldn't have touched this one yet. All right. So that would be, where are we at here? X 18, 24, and 2 is x to the 26th. Whoops, I don't know why I'm on the highlighter, but that's okay. Now I'm going to do the y's. The y to the 3rd, the y to the 12th, and the y to the 2nd. So that's 15 and 2 is 17. So y to the 17th. And then I have to do my z's. 6, no z in the second one, and 2 is z to the 8th. So there's your answer that you should have for number 2. Okay, here's problem number 3. Be careful with the fractions. Go ahead, copy the problem down, work it out, and then come back and watch me walk through it. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and work it out. Okay, so I'm going to start with my negative 2/3 to the 3rd. So I'm going to go right ahead and write that out just so that we see what happens here. So negative 2/3 times negative 2/3 times negative 2/3. So 3 negatives is going to make a negative. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So that's negative 8 27ths. And then x to the 2nd to the 3rd, that's easy. That's x to the 6th. So there's my first parentheses. My second parentheses, when I take negative 1/2 times negative 1/2, that's 1/4. And then, of course, my x to the 5th to the 2nd is x to the 10th. And my y to the 7th to the 2nd is 14. And then my last parentheses, if I take 3/4 and square it, that's 9/16. And then x to the 6 times 2 is 12, and y to the 8 times 2 is 16. Okay, so now I'm ready to combine all these. All right, so if I write down all my fractions, so negative 8 27ths times 1/4 times 9/16. Okay, I'm not going to multiply them because I want to simplify wherever I can. So 4 goes into 8 twice, 2 goes into 16 8 times, 9 goes into 27 3 times. So what do I have left? I have negative 1 on the top and 3 times 8 on the 24 on the bottom. So I have negative 1 24ths. Okay, x to the 6th, x to the 10th, and x to the 12th. That gives me 16 and 12 is 28, so x to the 28th. Y to the 14th, y to the 16th is y to the 30th. So there's your final answer to number 3. All right, here's problem number 4. So again, copy it down, work it out, come back and watch me work it out. Okay, let's start with the first parentheses. So if I take 4 squared and I square it, that's 4 to the 4th. X cubed to the 2nd is x to the 6th. Y to the 4th. And then, of course, there's an imaginary one here, so that's z to the 2nd. Okay, if I do the second parentheses, again, there's an imaginary negative 1 here. That negative is not attached to the x. So negative 1 cubed, negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. There's an imaginary 1 on the x, so that's x to the 1 times 3 is x cubed. Then we have y to the 12th, and we have z to the 21st. Okay, the last parentheses, if I take negative 2/9 and I cube it, it's going to be a big one, but that's okay. So negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 is negative 8. And then 9 times 9 is 81, times 9 is 729. And then we have x to the 9th, y to the 6th, imaginary 1 on the z, so that's z to the 3rd. Okay, so now I'm ready to start putting stuff together. So let's start with the coefficients. So the first thing we got to do is we got to figure out what 4 to the 4th is. So 4, 4, 4, 4. That's 16 times 16, which is 256. So we have 256 times -1 times -8 over 729. Okay, 256 times -8 is a big number. It's -2048 over 729. Oh, but I just realized I had a negative here, so that's going to make a positive. So it's positive 2048 over 729. Okay, now I'm ready to put everything else together. So x to the 6th, x to the 3rd, and x to the 9th. So that's x to the 18th. So x to the 18th. And then if I look at my y's, y to the 4th, y to the 12th, y to the 6th, that is 4 and 12 is 16, plus 6 is 22. And then last but not least, I've got z to the 2nd, z to the 21st, and z to the 3rd. So 23, 26. All right, so here's your answer, if you can see it down here. 2048 over 729, x to the 18th, y to the 22nd, z to the 26th. Okay, so first of all, let me just say that what I saw in your guys' homework before break was, I think maybe some of us were rushing through it and we weren't being careful about our coefficients. We weren't underlining things like I did in every problem. And when you don't do that, you forget terms, okay? You guys have got to slow down, because if this particular problem, number 4, were on a test or quiz coming up, you only that problem would be worth 2 points. If you miss one thing, I would give you 1 out of 2 points. But as soon as you miss 2 things, you automatically miss the entire problem. So for example, let's say you made the 18 on the x is 17 on a quiz, but you got everything else right. 2048, 729, the 22nd, the 26th, everything's right. Except for that 18, you would miss -1 out of 2. But as soon as you missed one other thing, like maybe you made the fraction a negative and you missed the 18, you would automatically miss both points. Okay, so you got to be very careful. So what you're going to do now is you need to submit your notes, okay, as your assignment. And then tomorrow we will do a division video. And then on Friday, you'll do an assignment over both 7.1 and 7.2, so I can make sure you understand these before next week we will be putting in negative exponents. You also need to remember that your weekly skills 5 is due on Friday. So I know this is a lot, but this is how math class is going to have to go for a while. We'll get through this together. I will be planning a Zoom meeting probably next week so that we can actually, do some problems together and answer questions that you guys have. But the big thing is, when I assign a video, you've got to watch every bit of the video, because that's the teaching now. We don't have any choice about it. Okay? All right. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow on the next video.